Tens of millions of people bought the original Nintendo Switch for its convenience, but there was a harsh truth. The biggest games often couldn't run well on it. We had to rely on cloud technology to play games like Resident Evil 7 and Resident Evil Village, and we all know how bad that was. Inexperienced, dependent on network speed, prone to lag, and unable to run smoothly. But that has ended. On February 27, 2026, Resident Evil Requiem, the 9th main title in the series, will be released. It is not only being released simultaneously with powerful platforms like PC and PlayStation 5, but it is also a native game, running natively on the Nintendo Switch 2. This is a historic turning point for Nintendo. But the question is, how did they do it? And what does this mean for the future of the gaming industry? Let's look back. The last time a new mainline Resident Evil game was natively released on a Nintendo console was more than 2 decades ago. This shift shows that Capcom has absolute confidence in the potential of the Switch 2. They no longer see this as a low-risk venture. Instead, they've made a major investment in day-one development. One of the reasons this success was surprising was one of the developers' revelations. Producer Masato Kumazawa said the development team was positively surprised by how smooth the process was. And director Koshi Nakanishi said that developing this game was a matter of scaling rather than a major challenge. This is huge. Instead of a forced downgrade from a PC version, Capcom built the RE engine in a way that can be easily adapted to suit multiple platforms, from high-end PCs to lower-end systems. This shows that the success lies not just in the hardware, but also in Capcom's development philosophy. So, what about the Switch 2 that made this possible? Everything starts with the core hardware, the NVIDIA T239 SoC. This chip is said to have 8 CPU cores and 1,536 GPU cores, along with 12 GB of LPDDR5 RAM. The RAM is much larger than the 4 GB of the original Switch, which helps the game handle complex graphical resources much better. But the biggest challenge is the power limit. When in handheld mode, the GPU clock speed drops sharply from 1007 MHz to just 561 MHz. This is why DLSS is so important. Resident Evil Requiem has a very low native resolution, only around 600p. Then, NVIDIA's special DLSS technology will instantly upscale that image to a higher screen resolution. Essentially, this creates a multiplier effect on the number of pixels, making the game look much better than it actually is. But that's not all. The Switch 2 also has dedicated RT cores, ray tracing. However, due to the low number of cores and power limits, Capcom had to make a smart choice. Instead of using the expensive path tracing method seen on higher-end systems, they used ray-traced global illumination, RTGI. This allows them to maintain realistic dynamic lighting and shadows, a crucial element for the horror atmosphere of Resident Evil, without overloading the system. What's important isn't what the Switch 2 can do, but what Capcom chose to give up. For example, they reduced the quality of textures and replaced the modern strand-based hair rendering method with the older hair card method. This method replaces complex geometric blocks with 2D textures, which significantly reduces the cost of graphical processing. These trade-offs are not clumsy compromises. They are strategic calculations. Capcom prioritized what was most important: a tense pace, dramatic lighting, and a stable frame rate. As a result, the core horror experience remains intact. So, what does this mean for the future? The success of Resident Evil Requiem shatters the cloud-only precedent. It proves that modern AAA games can run natively on the Switch 2 as long as developers use the right tools like DLSS. This will encourage other major publishers to invest in developing games for the Switch 2. This new standard forces developers to consider scalability as a core part of their cross-platform game development strategy. Nintendo didn't just create a console, they created a new platform where big AAA games are no longer a distant dream. And that's how the Switch 2 is changing the game. Will other developers follow this path? Let me know what you think in the comments below.